Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good day, and thank you for joining us on Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Tabak. I'll be the moderator for today's discussion. Our topic is, well, the title is Pandemic Education, but we're not going to educate you about the pandemic. We're going to talk about how teachers have adapted to this medical health emergency. Students and teachers have had to learn how to teach and learn in different ways in the last year. Some of these lessons may have a value even after this public health emergency passes. That is, we've been struggling to just survive in the first few months of this extraordinary year. And as time passed, we may have picked up some ideas that improved our teaching, maybe in ways that we can carry forth into the coming years. So I have two guests to help us explore this issue, and I'll briefly name them and ask them to say a few words about themselves. Bob Reed is the Director of Innovation in the Linn-Mar School, in the Linn-Mar School District, and he has some extensive experience teaching at several different levels, and I'm hoping he'll tell us a little bit about that. Charley Reed is also Charley Liberko is also a very experienced teacher. He is my colleague at Cornell College, so I think I might put myself into this conversation more than I usually do. We usually have 3 guests, but today we have a moderator and 2 guests. And as it happens, the moderator is also a teacher. So Charley is teaching chemistry for us at Cornell College and has been with us for a long time. Not as long as me, but a long time. And I teach computer science at Cornell College. All right. So Bob, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit more about your background. And as I told you when I met you the other day, I'm fascinated by the title of Director of Innovation. That's what I want. Okay, I'm gonna pass on Professor Emeritus. I want to be Director of Innovation. That's the next step here. Go ahead. Tell us a little bit about your background here.
Well, thanks for welcoming me to the show. I really appreciate the nice warm welcome and being here tonight. I've really had a unique experience that I've taught at the elementary, middle, and high school level. Prior to moving into central office, where I was the middle school director of teaching and learning, 2 years ago I became director of innovation, and it's an awesome job. I am able to work with students from kindergarten to 12th grade in our district, and really my passion is thinking about how to integrate technology to leverage student learning to even higher levels than what we do just by in-person teaching alone. And it's a really great job. I'm very excited every day. And the pandemic has actually pushed us really further than I even imagined us being when we started a year ago in this journey.
So can you tell me about your office? Who works with you? How many other people are doing this kind of work? And then while many of our members of our audience will be familiar with Linn-Mar schools, maybe a few statistics about how many schools, how many students, and so on.
Sure, I'd be happy to provide that information. Currently, we have 7 elementary schools, 2 intermediates that just opened this year, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. Our enrollment's about 7,900 students. We really pride ourselves on taking care of our students and thinking about the ways that we can transition between our different levels. As Director of Innovation, I am part of our Teaching and Learning Department, which includes our Associate Superintendent, our Executive Director of Student Services, and then the Teaching and Learning Directors at the elementary, middle, and high school level, as long as our IT Director also is part of our team. So we really take a systems approach to our decision making, and thinking of our decisions, we make them based on what's best for student learning and how can we think about our system and ways to just increase the capacity of what we do on a daily basis.
Okay. Now, Charley, you're teaching a laboratory science. That's one of the reasons I invited you, and I proposed this topic. I thought about some of the teachers who might face special challenges, the teachers of laboratory sciences, maybe foreign languages, maybe the arts, music or visual art might be hard to teach, especially hard to teach during this period. So again, tell us a little bit about where you're coming from. You have some interesting background there. My students were working with a data set from NIST last month, so I think that's familiar to you. Is that right?
I don't do a lot with NIST. So I teach introductory chemistry, and I teach organic chemistry, all of the organic chemistry courses in our sequence. I've been teaching for 27 years. 24 of those have been at Cornell College. Really a fine place to work, I think, because we develop very close relationships with our students. We get to know them very well. We have students go on to do a broad array of things when they're done with Cornell. Some of them go into industry. Some of them go to graduate school. Some of them go to medical school. So we have all kinds of needs that we try to help our students out with. My own background is an organic chemist, so I'm more into materials chemistry. So I study the properties of materials. And in addition to teaching, we also do some research with our students, and that's an important part of what we do. That's
right. So I thought you one time you would spend a year or two at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Is that not right?
That I have not, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Perhaps a year there in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay, so why don't we start our conversation just thinking back a year, and all of a sudden we were thrown into this. We had to scramble just to survive. So let's try to recollect what we had to do, how we made that happen. Anybody want to start there? I can talk about my own experience here too, but what were you doing in March and April and May of last year as we first tried to adapt?
I can jump in.
Yep.
1 year ago, I had just finished visiting our elementary PTOs talking about our 3-year one-to-one implementation plan. Little did we know that would come to full fruition this fall when we launched hybrid, in-person, and completely online learning. One of the things that fell under my job as Director of Innovation, I'm also the PK6 principal of our Family Choice Online Learning. So we took a system where we really hadn't had any strictly all online learning, developed it and launched it in September after the storm. Talk about a steep learning curve for students, teachers, and me as an administrator also. But every day we get better. And I still think there's going to be many great things that come out of this year, things that we'll continue to learn about and use in many different capacities, no matter what educational model we have.
Okay, I heard some words I think we might want to define for our audience. Did you use the phrase one-to-one? Did you say
that?
Yes, I
did. Yes, I did.
So let's define that term, please.
Yes, that would be one device for every student in our district. We were going to have, like I had mentioned, a 3-year plan where we gradually increase our capacity, starting at the high school and working our way down. But with the virus and the need to educate our children, we started this August, and we just forged ahead, and we're learning while we're doing also. And as I mentioned too, we're just hoping we get better every day and improving our craft to connect and leverage student learning.
And family choice, what did that word mean?
Family choice, our families in the Linn-Mar district at the start of the year, they could choose one of 2 instructional models, one completely online, which what we called our family choice model, and the other would be a hybrid. We started at our elementary and secondary and high school levels with a hybrid model, and throughout the year we've gone in and out of those dependent on the positivity rate in our community. So even if you were an on-site teacher, you will have had experience teaching completely online within our district, just because the ebb and flow of this year.
So Charlie, tell our audience how things changed on the campus of Cornell College, how the classrooms look different, how the campus looks different, the kinds of protocols that we adopted to try to cope with this epidemic. Okay.
Well, let's see. A year ago, we were on spring break. So the students were out enjoying sunny weather. Professors were working to get ready for the next class when the shutdown orders came. And it became clear very quickly that our students would not be able to return to campus. I do think it's important for the audience to know that Cornell College has a unique one course at a time calendar that has really a lot to do with this whole thing. So we take one course at a time, where students take one course at a time in a 3.5-week block. We also teach one course at a time. And so this gives us a lot of flexibility in adjusting from block to block. And so the students, when they were on spring break, were not in the middle of a course, but had just finished a course and were ready to come back for the next 2 courses. So they were not able to return to campus. So we did a lot of scrambling because we had to make some decisions about how we were going to deliver our material. And as you said before, I teach a laboratory class, and our organic laboratory is its own course where the students are in the lab all day, every day. So our lecture part of that class are two separate courses that the students take beforehand. And we made a decision as a department that our students would not be able to do that laboratory course online. There is just too much hands-on material that they just were not going to be able to get. The actual hands-on manipulation of the different techniques that they were going to do. So we really weren't able to provide anything online. It's not the kind of thing where we could substitute kitchen chemistry. But even if we could, we need to remember that at that time, we weren't even allowed to go grocery shopping in many states. And so even if we devised experiments the students could have done in their kitchen, we couldn't have required that they go out and buy the materials to do that. And also safety is a huge concern for us too. And so we ended up canceling that organic laboratory course and postponing that until the fall. So we did come back in the fall and make up that course when the students could be on campus. There was a number of courses that we taught, and we handled this in a different way for almost every course that we taught.
Okay. So I'll say a little bit about my experience, if I may here. I'm teaching computer science. Now, in Cornell College, in normal circumstances, I would meet with my students for 2 hours in a classroom in the morning and another 2 hours in a laboratory in the afternoon. And the method of education is largely to solve problems together. So when we're all together in the classroom, I'll have my computer on and project the screen at the front of the room and invite students to come up, take a seat next to me, and we'll outline a solution to a problem together. And then in the afternoon, they'll work alone or in small groups of 3 or 4 in the laboratory, developing their solutions. And I'll walk around the room and help them, and periodically add an extra challenge or add a hint to help those who need some help getting through the exercise. Now, all of a sudden, last year, I had to teach a course to students who were not present on campus. I adopted some new software that allowed me to write mathematics and my computer code in a neat way, a formatted way, to include all of the Greek letters and math symbols and so on easily, and to allow students to conduct this exchange of messages themselves. So at first, I was just trying to deliver the content, find a substitute way to communicate the lesson. And then as time passed, I began to think more about the challenge of getting students engaged one with another, getting them talking to one another. And I began to miss the informal interactions that I had had with students in previous years. All the time I spend with students before the start of a class, after the start of the class, during the break period, when I meet students on the sidewalk on campus or in the dining hall or the library and so on. And those opportunities were lost, and I had to think hard about how I develop a relationship with each of these students and how I encourage them to develop relationships with one another, and how I get them to collaborate on the solutions to these problems when they're all in separate places. Now this year, since September, I have not taught any entirely online courses. I've taught hybrid. So some of my students are in the classroom with me and some are far away. One of the special challenges is in one term, I had students in China, I had a student in Scotland, one in Italy, and one on the East Coast. So two on the West Coast. I had them in time zones scattered all over the world. So that presented a special challenge. Anybody want to, does that prompt anybody to share some similar experiences? The time zone challenge, the informal interaction with students. What do you think there?
I'll jump in a little bit on the informal interaction with students. On our online model, we do community circles where kids check in with the teachers on a daily basis. And I think that really has built a strong online community. One thing that we did realize from a teacher perspective once this started was how difficult it was to plan lessons. In a classroom, you can mingle with your students, you can form small groups and be in the room and monitor those things. When you're strictly online, you have to plan almost every action that you're going to take in your lesson and really have it well thought out and well planned. And again, making sure all your resources will open, all the resources are accessible for students, and that you can get the proper feedback to the students during the teaching and learning process also. So we've been becoming better at that. I still think we can improve, but you just miss the informal interaction, like, hey, I have a great book over here on my shelf, I'll give that to you. And you can check out this information that may put you further, or mingling with the students. It's much more difficult to do in a completely online environment.
Okay.
And I would say I consider myself very lucky that I did not have to teach completely online. As I said, my course in Block 7 got canceled. So I spent most of my time helping my colleagues teach online, which meant we did a lot of videotaping of the laboratory experiments so the students could, at least watch what was going on and take the data and write up their reports. That was mostly just to get by, get the students what they need to get through that time. And then in the fall, we were lucky enough to let many of our students return to campus. And at that time, we had some students on campus, some students completely off campus, and some students even Zooming in from their dorm room. And so we had just a number of different ways that we handled that.
Now, did you work with students over the summer as I did? I had some students.
So we do research every summer with our students. So we think it's a formative experience for them, a very important thing. But we were barred from having students on campus this summer. So anything we did had to be remote. So rather than do the laboratory experiments like we had done in previous years, I had switched to literature review projects. And so I had 3 students that I worked with. I met with them individually each day. I had a online office hour that worked pretty well for me. I had a Google Doc for each of my students where they could keep their log and I could follow what they were doing. And in the Google folder, we could drop papers and sort of exchange information that way. And I have another colleague who does calculations, and they were able to do original research completely remotely, doing chemistry calculations, computer calculations.
Oh, okay. Now, Bob, I subscribe to an online forum for computer science teachers, and there was a lot of talk, a lot of worry about the potential for cheating. Those students are now at home. We can't have timed proctored examinations, and this, as we did before. I have a strong opinion about some of what I read, and I'll try to hold back for a moment. But was this an issue for the two of you? We now have to, we're not only delivering the content in a different way, but maybe we have to evaluate students' progress in a different way. And maybe we even have to think about the role of grades and test scores and so on in a different way than we did before. Any comments on that?
Absolutely. We one of the things we were concerned about was the anxiety level in the students. This was a big disruption for them. And as you know, examinations can be very anxiety causing for the students. And so what several of my colleagues did was to put less weight on the examinations and more weight on just daily quizzes. That gave the students a little bit more feedback right away. And we thought that was a worthwhile thing to do. Some of my colleagues had been using online homework systems. I find that very hard to grade, especially with organic chemistry, where it's very pictorial, and I have to be able to write directly on their drawings that they make and give feedback to them. And so this was kind of difficult for me because everything that they submitted for homework, I had to download, essentially write on, and then scan it back and email back to them. And I know there's probably fancier ways of doing that, but I just didn't have the tools or the knowledge on doing that.
So what about grading and evaluation in the K through 12 schools there, Bob?
Yeah, it's really interesting to drop into a kindergarten class and see the work there. Most of our kindergarten students have a trusted adult somewhere with them, at least at the start of the year to do that. But as we've grown, I think the trust has grown with that home-school relationship where we know what the students are capable of doing. We use our assessments to pinpoint that and to diagnose their learning needs. Also, being in public schools, we do have required state assessments that we're giving, and we have been administering those virtually. Our FAST scores, which are reading and mathematics screeners, they are administered 3 times a year. We've had both windows in the virtual world and the on-site learning world. And then this April, we'll be administrating the ISASP, which is the Iowa Statewide Assessment of Student Progress. If you want to think of it as the old Iowa ITBS, it's just updated online now. So we're still following and gathering assessment data from a standardized approach, but the classroom approach is really much different when we're teaching online, thinking about what types of assessments we can provide students where we can truly depict where they're at and if they are meeting our priority standards.
I write questions for the advanced placement exam, so I'm employed by the Educational Testing Service to do that. And with those exams going online, my employer gave me the directions to write more questions that couldn't be answered easily by referring to a computer. This drove me crazy. I'm teaching computer science. If I were back in industry employing you to be a software engineer, the engineers I would fire would be the ones who didn't look for help, not the ones who did look for help. That would be my attitude. Okay, another term that came up is asynchronous versus synchronous. These are 2 words we heard a lot of this time. I alluded to this briefly. I found myself in a difficult spot in the fall where I was trying to provide an online presence for students who are in China, 13 hours apart on the clock from me, and for a student in Italy, whatever that is, 7 hours in the other direction or something. The students in California who would have to get up before dawn to join the regular class in the morning at Cornell. And so it's made me think a lot about how I can make myself available without knocking myself out, how I can strike a balance between my own needs to have a reasonable life. I can't be on duty 18 hours a day, and serving students whose geographic location might be very varied, and whose other needs might be very different. So I'm using more written materials. I'm storing more materials online where students can find them at any time. I'm encouraging more students to answer one another's questions so they're not solely reliant on me. And I think some of these lessons I will carry through to whenever we get back to normal. Okay.
And I will say that we utilize a lot of tutors in our department to help our students through the difficult times. And our student tutors are just students who've had this course in the past and done pretty well with it. They were very helpful in setting up online tutoring, and they could be available at different times so that I didn't feel like I had to be, at the beck and call 24/7. And so that really helped us out quite a bit, having the student tutors. Okay.
We're down to the last few minutes, so we're going to look for 1 or 2 more points and ask you to think about a concluding statement. Is there anything else you wanted to inject at this point, Bob?
Yeah, I will focus a little bit on the synchronous, asynchronous discussion. For our students, we really want to maximize the learning time in a synchronous environment for new concepts, exploring ideas, and then use the asynchronous time for reinforcement or practice of those concepts. And we do use a couple tools. We have some programs that match students' reading abilities or math abilities that they can access when they're outside the live instruction. And we really feel that even when we get back to normal, whatever normal is, we'll still carry those tools forward in small group settings. And it just allows more personalization when you're away from the teacher in that live instruction to work on the skills that you as a student may need.
Yeah.
And I would add that having virtual office hours, that's a helpful thing, not to replace our in-person office hours. As I say, we do one course at a time. We're with our students pretty much all day. But being available once in a while in the evening without having to commute in. We have also used some videotaped demonstrations that I think we might continue to use those, and possibly have the ability to videotape lectures when students get sick or have to miss for family or for sports reasons. So I think those are some components we'll probably keep when all of this is over.
Now, I began in my written communications to my students to divide it into 3 parts. One part was the content, the computer science lesson. Another part was a kind of how to learn, how to study, how to succeed, or a little bit of encouragement, if not study skills, encouragement. And then I often included in my posting to students something humorous or entertaining. So I'd put a song or a video that I had encountered during the week or an interesting story in the newspaper. I'd put in something about the Mars landing for the computer science students, something like that. So how to study, the lesson for the day, and something to kind of get you excited and entertained a little bit. All right, we're down to the last minute or 2. So do you have a message for our audience you want to say goodbye with here? Just 30 seconds from each here.
Well, I don't think we'll ever go back to the way it was before the pandemic. I think everything that we've learned will apply in the future and make education better for our students going forward.
Yep. And Charlie?
We are a residential liberal arts college. Being together face-to-face is what we do. I don't think that being online can ever replace what we do. There are other institutions that do a very fine job of that, and I don't think we'll ever be able to compete with that. But I would say I'm very grateful to our students and all of our staff and faculty who worked really hard to make this happen for us, to make this a successful thing for us. So I'm really grateful for everybody's efforts on this. It was a team effort.
That's a very good point. I think maybe that's something people outside of the educational world don't understand. This has brought teachers together, working together in new ways, and that has been one of the rewards of the year. I'm impressed with what some of my colleagues are doing in many different departments. I sometimes feel a little embarrassed. I'm a computer science professor, and they're using technology way better than I am. So. All right, well, thank you, Bob and Charlie, for joining us today, and thank all of you in our audience for joining us on Ethical Perspectives on the News. We hope to see you next time. Thank you very much, and good luck to your students at home, and we're all students. Good luck to all of you in your learning as we get back to normal here. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.